So I will welcome everybody to this presentation, and this is a presentation that is coming from the Winnebago Public Health Department, and my name is Gretchen Wheelock. I'm a nurse practitioner for the diabetes clinic with the Winnebago Health Department. We're located in the lower level of the 12 Clans Hospital, and what we do is once or twice a week we hold a clinic. We have certified diabetes educators, we have case managers, we have nutrition specialists, registered dietitians. We have all sorts of people on our team, and one of the things and the topics that we actually talk about quite a bit in our clinic is sugary beverages. So we wanted to present a little presentation to you, to the community today. Sugar-sweetened beverages is one of the topics that we feel like should be just as important as smoking or drinking alcohol or exercising. A lot of people are unaware of how much empty calories sugar-sweetened beverages have, and how much hidden sugar is in so many of the things that we drink. We feel like there should be billboards all over, not just Winnebago, but everywhere, all over the country, and probably all over the world. And also just some more education, especially for our youth, where kids are probably starting to become addicted to sugar-sweetened beverages, and then they'll continue throughout their adulthood. And so if there's any way for us to stop that, or to really shine a light on reducing the amount of sugar-sweetened beverages, we do feel like that is the best for everyone's health moving forward. So the objectives of this presentation are going to be to summarize the sugar consumption, and we'll have a lot of statistics in this presentation, but not so much that you can't absorb and understand them. We're going to review different types of sugary beverages, and sometimes where sugar is hidden in beverages and things that we don't think about. We're going to evaluate sugar recommendations. We're also going to analyze the health risks of drinking sugary beverages. We're going to come up with some ideas on how to rethink your drink, and then some motivation for changes, some little things that you can do to maybe customize the beverage that you are drinking. All right. So the sugar-sweetened beverage trends. One of the reasons why I chose this picture here with all the sugar cubes inside of this drink is because we often call these sugar-sweetened beverages liquid candy. And there's so much of what we drink, for instance, if we go to Starbucks or a coffee shop and we order a mocha with whipped cream and all the fixins in it, right? So not only does it have the chocolate, but it has the whipped cream. There's so much sugar in the, maybe even the vanilla seasoning or a flavoring that you've added to that. If we go to a gas station and get a Slurpee or a slushie, you can assume that a majority of that is also full of sugar. And then just even drinking like a Coca-Cola is a liquid candy. So a lot of times we just think, oh, it's a beverage, it's a drink, but it's definitely more so a component of candy than it is closer to, let's just say, water. Americans are drinking more soda pop than ever before. And this is mostly because of, our sizes keep getting bigger, super size. You go into a Come and Go and you've got those Bajunga offerings of pop, and they're relatively, pretty cheap. Pop is getting cheaper. And we also know that when we start drinking pop, and for instance, it says here that on average, Americans are drinking 597 cans of pop. Now, a can is much smaller than those big, huge fountain drinks at the gas station, but that's still more than one a day. It's more like having 2 cans of pop, and that's the average American. That's not just the people who are drinking pop. We all know that teens are also drinking way too much of the sugary beverages. and their consumption continues to just keep getting higher and higher. And then also one of the reasons why we wanted to do this presentation is that American Indians and Alaska Natives, their consumption of soft drinks is more than twice that of the US national average rate. And I was able to follow this in the Indian Health Services. There's a program that they had run in 2017 about sugar-sweetened beverages and trying to see if there was ways to shine lights on this topic, and then how can we provide a little more oversight to that. Okay, so I know that this is probably a pretty easy question. What are sugar-sweetened beverages? What some people don't think about though is like when we think of sugar-sweetened beverages, we always assume to see the word sugar on the label, and we will get into labels here in a little bit too. But with that, there's a lot of things that are sugar, but they're not called sugar. And so anything with an ose on the end, so see how it says like dextrose or fructose or glucose, lactose, those are things that if you're looking at a label, you can know right away, oh, that's sugar, okay? Corn syrup, sugar. You hear a lot about the high fructose corn syrup. So looking at that label and noticing, okay, what else could the sugar be? And one thing that I always look at is I look at the calories, because if a drink doesn't have sugar in it, there really shouldn't be many calories in it. So if there's quite a bit of calories in it, then you have to know, okay, I need to be looking at that label. So other things is that we know that soda pop has sugar in it. Sweet tea has a lot of sugar in it. So does lemonade. So sometimes people say, oh, I don't drink pop, but I drink lemonade. Lemonade has a lot of sugar in it. We also think about like Gatorades, any of the aids have a lot of sugar in them, unless if you're drinking the zero. Now we know that there's also diet pop, and I'll talk a little bit about diet pops in a little bit here too. Energy drinks have a lot of sugar in them as well. There are some diet energy drinks, any sort of fruit drink. So sometimes they'll trick us into thinking that we're drinking like an orange juice or cranberry juice, but it's not 100% pure fruit juice. It's a fruit drink, and it might have like a concentrate in it. So those are also tips for you to think about. And then specialty coffees and teas, we've talked about that too a little bit, where, you know, someone says, oh, I'm just drinking a coffee, but by the time you actually look at how many calories are in that coffee, my mom always likes to call it foo-foo coffee. That foo-foo coffee, sometimes you're drinking like 700 or 900 calories by the end, and that's an entire meal, but a lot of times we're not drinking it as a meal. Also, I think about like if people drink alcohol, a lot of times people will drink alcohol with maybe a cranberry juice or an orange juice. So not only are you getting the alcohol, but you're also getting all that sugar content as well. And then a lot of times people will drink like a hard cider or Mike's Hard Lemonade or a Smirnoff. Sweet wines, those all have sugar in them as well. And a lot of times we don't consider those as being high in calories or high in sugar. And for the most part, sugar drinks lack any sort of nutritional value or contents. And they're just empty calories. Now, if you're drinking something with more protein in it, like a latte or something that has milk in it, you are getting some additional benefit to that. There are some vitamin waters that, you know, you're getting some vitamins and electrolytes, but for the most part, unless if you are working out really, really hard, you know, you're running several miles a day and you're lifting, nobody really needs those sports beverages. And unfortunately, it seems like that's our go-to drink whenever we seem to be sweating or working out. But they're not really necessary, and water is just as good, if not better, for us. All right, so in the clinic, we have this survey that we do with patients, and it's just to really try to review what's a normal drink consumption for somebody. So when I first start with this, I usually, I'll say, don't just think about today or this week. I'm thinking about what do you regularly consume? And so, of course, we have good things on here, and then we have other sugar sweetened beverages that we, basically like to talk about. But sometimes people are really surprised by how many beverages they are drinking and when they're drinking them, and if it's possible to cut back. So as you look at this list here, just consider, are you drinking water, and how much water are you drinking? So on average, you should be drinking 8 to 10 cups of water a day. Unsweet tea or sugar sweetened tea. A lot of people like to go and get the sweet tea from the gas station, or McDonald's, I hear, has really good sugar sweet tea. Black coffee or coffee with sweeteners. So sometimes people will put the sugar in it. They might use the artificial sugar sweeteners, or the low sugar substitutes is what they call them. A lot of times the creamer, so this was another example I wanted to give. Creamer has quite a bit of sugar in it, especially if you get the, I'm blanking on it. They're in the blue bottle, and a lot of times people will add quite a bit of that liquid creamer that has sugar in it. I've also noticed people who drink soy, almond milk, oat milk. Those are kind of new and trendy milks that people will drink. It's hard to find one without sugar in it, no added sugar. And it's interesting to see how much better the sugar version actually tastes than the ones without the added sugar. Fruit juices. So is it 100% fruit juice, or is it a fruit flavored drink such as Sunny D, bug juice, Kool-Aid, lemonade? Then here's those Gatorades and Powerades. The diet sodas, energy drinks. How many energy drinks are you drinking on a daily basis or a weekly basis? And then those alcoholic beverages. And so a lot of times on the sides, we'll actually write, okay, what type of alcohol? Are they mixing it with anything? What types of regular soda? How much of the regular soda? So we like to say the 8-ounce cups, but we know that a lot of people aren't only drinking 8 ounces, they're drinking more than that. So this is a great review for you if you ever have time to just kind of sit down and figure out, okay, what are my regular beverages that I drink every single day or frequently throughout the week? All right, so how are sugar beverages affecting us? So sugar beverages are actually the #1 source of added sugar in the US diet today. And this is what's contributing. So if we're following an 1,800 calorie or a 2,000 calorie diet, I can't even tell you what I'm following. I just eat what I eat, right? Most of us just eat what you eat. But we typically want to know, then anything we drink, it's up and above that, because remember, those are empty calories that are not filling us up. So we'll drink a pop, but it might be quenching our thirst, but it's not filling us up. And so we're still hungry. And so on average, it says that there are 4 calories in 1 gram of sugar. So for instance, and again, we'll go through nutrition labels here, and we'll follow this here again, is that if a product has 15 grams of sugar in it, then you times that by 4, so 4 calories per gram, that's 60 calories in that beverage. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot. You're like, oh, well, it's under 100 calories, but that's just in the sugar alone. That doesn't include anything else that might be in that beverage as well. And again, most of our drinks aren't 8-ounce sizes. They're much bigger than that. And so the 60 calories is a very small portion, more like 120 to 40 is the amount of calories that you may be drinking if, let's say, you're drinking a Coca-Cola at the time. It does take on average, so this is the part that I don't like, more than 45 minutes to jog off or burn 240 calories from a 20-ounce Coca-Cola. That's a long time to be exercising and to jogging. And I don't even know that I can jog for 45 minutes at this point in time. So if you're walking, that you almost have to double that just to get rid and equalize those calories that you've consumed. And then, like, what are the effects then of sugar? So as I mentioned, sugar is an addiction, just like any other drug. And I know it seems, we don't think that sugar is as much of a taboo as maybe say smoking or alcohol or other drugs, right? But in a way, sugar is an addiction, and it is a drug that our body, we want that sugar, and because we get this sugar high and then we crash, and then it leaves us feeling tired. And then what happens is it becomes this vicious cycle where we're craving sugar again. And just like any other addiction, when you start with a low amount of sugar, your body actually ends up needing more and more to satisfy that craving. And so eventually we're drinking so much sugar or eating so much sugar that it's not even almost effective. Like, it's not changing our bodies at all. And I know my kids, I'll watch it. I'll see them eat some candy, and literally within 15 minutes, they are bouncing off the walls, running around in circles in my home, and they cannot control themselves. And it's so interesting to see that I'm like, well, what has changed? What has happened? And sure enough, it's like, oh my gosh, they just drank a root beer, or they just drank a Sprite, or they just had a boatload of candy, and they can't control themselves. And it's, kind of a sad behavior to see. With caffeine then, a lot of these drinks that we're drinking also have a lot of caffeine, and that's just the American way, really. Like, we aren't sleeping enough, so then we're tired, and then we need more caffeine to get us through the day. I am guilty of drinking at least 2 pretty good sized cups of coffee every morning. But what we do know is that caffeine dehydrates us because it makes us pee. And so we're peeing quite a bit. We're getting dehydrated. Our cells start to shrink up. It starts to affect our skin. It affects our sleep disturbances, especially if you're drinking caffeine at night. Even if you say, oh, caffeine doesn't bother me, I can sleep like a baby, or I can fall asleep right away. It's disrupting that REM sleep. That's the most important sleep in the middle of the night. Caffeine, if consumed quite a bit of it, it can make us irritable. It can cause anxiety. You might notice racing heartbeat, elevated blood pressure. Too much caffeine can also cause our stomachs to feel a little bit achy or just kind of raw inside. I do want to mention that there's no amount of caffeine that a child should really have. And so that's something that you should consider if you have kiddos or nieces and nephews that are young. Kids don't need caffeine because of all these things that I just mentioned. So if you're an adult and you are wondering, well, how much caffeine is safe for me? In general, they do say that 400 milligrams of caffeine is the normal equivalent for an adult. Now, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, then you should be drinking way less caffeine than that. So for instance, actually, it's not an 8-ounce cup of coffee. I'm sure it's much more than that, at least 12. That's got to be around 100 milligrams of caffeine. So I'm thinking if I'm drinking 2 of those, I'm having at least 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, if not more than that, depending on how big my coffee cup gets. 1 shot of espresso has 64 milligrams. So on average, I would say that if you get a latte, mocha, something like that, it has at least 2 shots of espresso in it. So that's 120 milligrams in 1 cup of your coffee. A lot of times if you get a bigger, a venti, or you ask for extra shots, then just keep kind of adding that up. Black tea has a little less. There's about 50 milligrams of caffeine in your black tea. Green tea is half of that. So green tea is always nice if you're trying to really limit how much caffeine, but you just need a little bit of caffeine. And then soda is about the same as the green tea, right around about 25 milligrams. And that's only for an 8-ounce cup, remember, for all of these. So I do get a lot of questions about caffeine, and caffeine is not bad for you. Some people need caffeine, and I'm aware of that because I need it myself, but you really need to limit the amount of caffeine. And so that's another thing with those energy drinks, is to consider, okay, how much caffeine is actually in this one energy drink? And then are you feeling heart palpitations afterwards? And I almost kind of cringe if I hear that somebody's drinking more than one energy drink in a day. Just because it's a lot of caffeine compact into a small amount of a drink. All right, so the health effects of sugary drinks. So this little diagram is quite nice. It gives you the down and dirty of the main things that we are concerned about with sugar, in addition to, our skin not looking great if we consume too much sugar. Tooth decay is one of the biggest ones. So because sugar likes to hide out in between our teeth and in between our gums, tooth decay does happen. That's another reason why we really try to limit, and little kids, especially kids below the age of 2, should never have sugary beverages, including pop. And we never want to see them in a bottle because that's when we're seeing real long-term health effects from the teeth. And there's this common motto that says that you can determine the health of an individual by just looking in their mouth alone. So healthy teeth, healthy gums, regular visits to the dentist might be able to let us know, like, how's the rest of the body going to be in perspective to the mouth. Brushing, flossing is a really good idea, especially after candy consumption, sugar-sweetened beverages. Brushing at least twice a day, flossing at least once a day. They recommend twice a day so that we can get all that sugar out of our teeth. We also know that when we drink large amounts of sugary beverages, that's going to increase our weight. So that's obesity. And that can also contribute to that metabolic syndrome, which that is elevated blood pressure, elevated blood sugars, elevated triglyceride levels, which is a little component of our cholesterol. And then we have in our cholesterol good cholesterol and we have bad cholesterol. And so the good cholesterol we want to be high. And so what it does is sugar sweetened beverages can lower that good cholesterol down. And then we have more body fat. Now, if our blood sugars remain high all the time with these liquid beverages, that's when we're seeing people that are being diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes. And I can't tell you guys how many times I have seen patients that come in with full-blown diabetes and they literally just stop drinking sugary beverages and their diabetes goes back and is completely under control. And so once you're diagnosed with diabetes, you kind of always have diabetes and know that, okay, I'm very sensitive to sugar and my pancreas is just not able to keep up with the insulin that it needs. And that's part of the reason why we have such a problem, an epidemic of diabetes and obesity in America, is because of how much sugar and how much sugar sweetened beverages there are here. Now, one of the other things is that down here it mentions gout. So some of you might know what gout is, some of you may not. It's just a form of arthritis, and usually it'll happen first like in the joints of the big toes. And these are like sudden painful attacks that then will sometimes like cause tenderness or redness in the joints. And so this is actually one of the things that we try to ask when somebody comes in with gout is, are you drinking a lot of caffeine and are you drinking a lot of sugar? And if you can decrease that, then some of those gout attacks will decrease as well. So in knowing your risks, adults who drink one sugary beverage or more are 27% more likely to be overweight or obese than non-drinkers. And this is regardless of income, socioeconomic status, ethnicity. We know that, it's all about how much sugary drinks you drink. Also, persons consuming sugary drinks regularly, so 1 to 2 cans a day or more, have 26% greater chance of developing type 2 diabetes. So if you think about with type 2 diabetes, that's your blood sugars are high and your pancreas that creates the insulin to bring your blood sugars down over time just has this hard time keeping up with your body's demand and requirements. And so if you're drinking all these milligrams of sugar and then you're eating desserts and carbohydrates, then your sugar just continues to stay up here and your pancreas says, I'm trying to keep up, I'm trying to keep up, I'm trying to keep up, and it just can't keep up. So the blood sugars remain high. And then that's when we see the side effects of diabetes, such as you're peeing all the time, even in the middle of the night, you're getting up multiple times a night, not just one time a night, like 2, 3, 4 times a night. You're feeling thirsty all the time. You just can't quench that thirst. Sometimes people start getting blurred vision. Also with the soda consumption, it's associated with nearly twice the risk of cavities in children and increase their likelihood in the adult. So as they drink sugar as a child, then they can they have increased that risk for all the dental tooth decay, cavities, dental work that needs to be done. And then as we know too, that the untreated cavities, if we leave them for too long, that creates infections, pain, and anyone who's had tooth infections and pain knows that you don't want that more than once, or you don't want that at all. And then that's sometimes when we have to pull teeth and just more and more problems are happening because of sugar. And this is all because of sugar. Adults who drink 1 can of sugary drinks per day have 20% higher risk of heart disease and of dying of heart attack. And actually I put adults and I forgot to change this men, but this is for men and women. Originally, the statistics showed men and then said women have very similar outcomes. So I just changed that all together to adults. All right, so these are some of the infographics that I found that I thought were really helpful. A couple of them came from Harvard University, a couple other came from the USDA. And so let's look at this bottom one here. I think that this is really interesting. It shows a 20-ounce cup of soda is worth 17 and 3/4 cookies. So if we think about, like, I don't know that any of us would actually sit there and eat 17 cookies at one time. Like we would stop at least, I would hope, after 3 or 4 maybe. And we'd say, oh my gosh, I can't eat another one of those cookies. But how easy is it for us to just sit and drink 20 ounces of pop? I mean, it's pretty easy to do that, but it's the same amount of sugar. And then we think about a fruit drink. Now, again, we typically don't try to count natural sugars. So if you're literally taking an orange and you're pressing it down and you're making an orange juice, while your blood sugars are going to go high, and if you have diabetes, we're going to talk about that. We would rather you eat your fruit than drink your fruit, because you're going to need a lot more to drink to be satisfied than if you'd eat an orange. But a fruit drink such as, like, let's say Sunny Delight, it's 8 and 3/4 of a cookie. And then sports drinks such as a Gatorade, Powerade, those aids are 9.5 cookies worth of sugar. All right, another thing here is this came from Harvard University, and this just kind of shows how many teaspoons of sugar are in, say, a cranberry fruit cocktail. This would be like an orange Fanta or an orange soda. These are 12-ounce beverages, so a little more than an 8-ounce. So we have 170 calories or 10 teaspoons of sugar. And then it goes to cola, our sports drinks. Now here it's showing much less here. So this would be maybe if it's like a low sugar drink. And then let's say you had a Splenda in a cup of tea, how there's much less. And then a coffee with 1 sugar packet, so 1 teaspoon of sugar. And then how things look if you're drinking, say, water or a sugar-free beverage. And then here's just another way of kind of looking at some of the most popular beverages in America and how many total calories are in that 12-ounce serving and how many grams. So remember, with the grams, we say every 1 gram of sugar is 4 times the calories. And then how many teaspoons of sugar are in that. All right, and then this is another graphic that we actually use in the Winnebago Public Health Department. We have these on our tables in Whirling Thunder, and we'll bring them to and from the hospital if we need to. And so if you're ever at Whirling Thunder, you can see these in our educational community rooms. It's really interesting just to see how much sugar is in, even, you know, this is not just about drinks, but it's also about our foods as well. And how much is in even just, let's say, a cup of applesauce. If it says sweetened or unsweetened, that makes a big difference. Some of, and I think that this will surprise a lot of people, is the fruit yogurts, the low-fat fruit yogurts. Really have to look at how many grams of sugar are in that. Now, milks, cheeses, yogurts, they have natural sugars in them. And so that's why it's so nice that now labels are required to put added sugar. And I want to show you that here in just a little bit about how to look at what's the sugar content and what's the added sugar, because it's the added sugar that we really want to be looking at and aware of. So instead of being in, you know, teaspoons or in these little sugar cube boxes, we also have this handout too, and it's one of our pop-ups about how many sugar cubes, how many grams of sugar are in each of these beverages as well. So if you see a drink that you might be privy to and you drink on the regular, how many of these sugar cubes are actually stacking up and are in your drink. So they picked out some of the most popular drinks. And again, just reminding everyone that water is 0 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Black coffee is 0 grams of sugar. So even if you're looking at this and thinking, okay, well, I'd rather just drink less, how could I drink a little less sugar then and make better choices? It takes a while to get used to it too. All right, so some of you might say, okay, well, how much sugar am I supposed to be consuming then? Because sugar is a normal part of our diets, and we all know that there needs to be a little bit of sugar in our diets. But a healthy, and I'm saying healthy again, and I'll say it in quotation marks, those that are trying to follow a healthy dietary pattern, there's really not much wiggle room for any sort of extra sugars. So extra sugars in your beverage, extra sugars through ice cream, dessert, carbohydrates. So there are three different kinds of carbohydrates. And so there's sugar, that's a carbohydrate. There are starches. So when I think about starches, I think about pasta, oats, grains, wheats, and then there's fiber. So fiber is also a carbohydrate. Now fiber, it actually doesn't really count as a sugar, an added sugar, because it has so many other things that help. It actually lowers our blood sugar. So that's why it's nice if you're going to eat something, let's say you're going to eat a pasta, you want to see if there's fiber in it, because if there's fiber in it, that fiber is going to lower the carb content of that food or beverage. And that'll help lower your blood sugars. What we typically then will say is that one carb serving is about 15 grams of carb. So I always think one carb serving, so a serving of carbs is 15 grams of carbs. And then typically what they say is that the value, the daily value of added sugar, so remember, sugar can be carbohydrates, okay, is 50 grams per day. And that's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. That's actually not a whole lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not a whole lot. And it really adds up. And then basically what they say is that with added sugars, we really should look at having less than 10% of our total calories. So that's the 50 grams per day of sugar. And this includes food and beverages. And let me see, I was going to say a little something more about this. So, okay, so for those that are interested in knowing, okay, well, let's say I have diabetes. I know I should eat less carbs then because I have diabetes, and I should really watch my sugar intake. So typically what they'll say is that most adults with diabetes should aim to have about 45 to 60 grams of carbs per meal. So remember, 15 grams is one serving. So you wouldn't want more than 3 or 4 servings of carbs in a meal. And then as a snack, you don't normally want to have more than about 1, maybe 2 grams of carbs. And so what they'll say is that about half of your calories or less, if you're trying to keep your blood sugars down, if you're trying to lose weight, we've all heard about like the keto diets or the low carb diets. The point of those is to have your carbs low so that then your body's not working off all those carbs. Instead, then they're working off the fat. So if you have diabetes, you don't want more than half of your diet to be carbs. And so remember, carbs, part of carbs or sugars is part of carbohydrates. It's one of the 3 subsets. All right. So limits then here's another little diagram that I liked. And they do kind of show that there is a little bit of a difference between men and women. And men tend to burn calories a little bit faster and easier than men. And it's not fair. I know it. But men, they can have a few more teaspoons of sugar and grams of carbs and calories than women. And these are total sugars. And then also, and that's from the American Heart Association. And then here's the no more than 15%, but the goal would be actually 10% of calories coming from sugars or from saturated fats. And this is for the full diet. So if you had, proteins, vegetables, fruits, dairy, grains, no more than 15% of your calories should come from sugars and saturated fats. And remember, 10% of that is usually sugars or less. All right. And then this is one of our working slides as far as how to read a label. Now, I mentioned that the sugars, they mention what's the total sugars. And now what's happened recently, the FDA, and this came out of the Obama administration. Remember when Michelle Obama was big into eating healthy and food labels and trying to get vending machines and pop machines out of schools and try to have healthier lunch programs in schools. She also had requested and added this, what are the added sugars? And I really, really like this because, like I said, with cheeses, dairies, fruit juices, there is some natural sugars in fruit, in our dairies. And so what I like to know is, okay, how much actual sugar is being added to this product? And so here, another thing that's really important is to look at how many servings. So this, So this particular nutritional fact says that there's 8 servings in this container. And so for like a 20-ounce drink, a lot of 20-ounce drinks have at least 2 servings, if not more. And that's really important because it's not just 110 calories in this entire container, it's 110 calories times 8 in this container. And then it goes through and says how many fats or saturated fats, cholesterol, and it'll give you the percentage of daily intake. And usually that's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So here it says that there is an included sugar of 23 grams of sugar. And they're saying that that's 46% of the recommended daily intake for a 2,000 calorie diet. Now, remember here, we talked about earlier in another slide, and I like to put it here just to correlate it again. The daily value for added sugar is 50 grams per day. So 1 serving per this nutritional fact is half of the daily amount that you should be taking in for a 2,000 calorie diet. So you could do 2 servings of this drink. And then beyond that, you've already been spent for the day. And then remembering that anything more than that is what's adding to the fat in our diet. That's what's contributing to the tooth decay, the gout, the diabetes, heart disease. And then as we know that sugar is also added, in baked goods or granola bars, fruit snacks, desserts. But we know that a lot of times our main added sugars are those sugar-sweetened beverages. This came from the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, so their kind of public health department. And they categorized beverages based on a stoplight. And so red beverages, these are highly added sugars that have empty calories. And so they say you should really think twice about drinking these red zone drinks, especially on a daily basis. We all have to let loose every once in a while. We have to have something that we've been craving. But if we're drinking these daily or multiple times a day, that's when we really have to pay attention to our calorie intake. So regular sodas, energy drinks, sports drinks, coffees, teas with sugar, drinks with added sugar, whole milk, flavored milks, and then 100% fruit juice that's more than 8 ounces. So those yellow zones are they're okay, but you don't probably want to drink them all the time, but they're better than the red zone beverages. That's what I always say to my patients with diabetes is diet sodas are much better than regular sodas in particular, if you have diabetes, because your body is already struggling and trying really hard to bring those blood sugars down. Diet iced teas, low calorie, low sugar drinks. If you're drinking less than 8 ounces of fruit juice, that's okay. Again, we like to have you eat your juice or eat your fruit as opposed to drink it. Any sort of milks that are 2% they do have higher amounts of calories in them. And then the green beverages, like the ones that no one's really going to squawk about and says, go ahead, drink as much as you want of them, is water, mineral water or sparkling waters that don't have any of the added sugar flavors. You have to you have to look at that food label because they can sneak it in there. And even if it doesn't taste like it has sugar, it can have sugar in it. 1% or skim unflavored milk is pretty good for our bodies. And then unsweetened coffees or teas are also very good for us. I get a lot of questions about sugar substitutes, and maybe you guys are thinking the same thing. I have a lot of people say, well, I've heard that the sweet and lows or the sugar substitutes are just as bad as sugar. And it depends. If you have, let's say, if you're already struggling being overweight, if you're already struggling with diabetes, if you're already struggling with heart disease, if you're already struggling with consuming too much, diet soda is a better alternative than regular soda. If you say, I can't give up soda, I oftentimes will say, well, can you drink diet soda? And one of the drinks that I would say that most people, like, let's say that you're a big Coca-Cola or a Pepsi drinker, most people can switch to Diet Dr. Pepper because it's just a completely different flavor if you're still in need of caffeine. So if you're drinking pop for the caffeine, Diet Dr. Pepper is more of a, I would say most of my patients and the people that I talk to can switch from the fully leaded sugar drinks to a Diet Dr. Pepper. So now with that being said, you really have to consume quite a bit of these artificial sweeteners in order for there to be a health risk. So in general, and the reason why I started the sucralose, or this also known as Splenda, is that you need a little less of the Splenda before, so let's say you have 12-ounce cans. Again, this is a lot of a drink. If you're having 5 cans of soda that have Splenda in them, then you might be getting to the point where it's probably not good for your health because of that artificial sweetener. But let's just say that 5 cans of regular soda are not good for your health either. They do say that, you could drink far more of the aspartame. That's a common lower sugar sweetener or a substitute. The sweet and low, you'd have to have 25 packets a day before it would cause any health risks. Again, this is a day. And in general, I highlighted this stevia or trevia, and then the monk fruit or nectris. These are generally safe to utilize, and there's no high limit amount. So if a patient comes in and says, okay, I want to use a sugar substitute, what is the best? I typically say stevia or trevia. Those are the ones that I tell them to stick with if they want to add it to their tea or their oatmeal or their coffee. So why decrease or avoid sugary beverages? Well, it's going to improve your mood throughout the day. And instead of having all of these highs and lows with your sugar, it's just going to keep your mood much more stable and balanced. And also, when you take sugary beverages away from your diet, you're going to avoid and prolong those life-altering diseases that we talked about earlier in the session. Not only is water and seltzers or the sparkling waters better for you, but it's more hydrating to your body. Caffeine, sugar, your body, the way that your body gets rid of it is it pees it out. So when you pee, you get dehydrated and then you need to drink more of it. You can avoid gaining weight by drinking less sugar. And then really it's about setting a good example for your friends and family. And sometimes people say, oh, well, my kids love drinking that juice, or, oh, they love, well, of course they do. There's a ton of sugar in it. And, but when we think about what's going to be most nourishing and how can we be friendly to our own bodies and friendly to our family and those of us that we love and care about. And so instead of stocking our refrigerators full of Coca-Cola and all of the fruit drinks that our family and friends love, maybe if we offer a diet pop or a diet lemonade or a sparkling water, they'll say, oh, well, I'll take that, or I'll take a tea without, and oh, I don't, oh shoot, I don't have this. Okay, but I have this instead. And then ultimately it's about saving money. So if we think about how much money we're spending on pop and how much money we're spending on our foo-foo drinks and our lattes, it's just, water is cheap, it's accessible, and so much better for our bodies and for our pocketbooks. So here was an example of how you could really kind of doctor up a water to make it taste even better by adding mint or blueberries, lemon, and adding a fun straw. Because sometimes we just have to trick ourselves into thinking that we're drinking something amazing, and then eventually we'll feel like it is better than what we were drinking. And then other helpful tips. So this is kind of our motivating factor is choose water over our sugary beverages. And if you're like, oh, I just need something else, berries, lime, lemon, cucumber also, or a combination of all of them is pretty tasty in water. Really what's most nourishing to our bodies is room temperature water. But I also know that having that cold water sometimes tastes better than that room temperature water. You can also just add a splash of juice to a plain sparkling water. Remember, less than 8 ounces of juice a day is better than, a big drink of soda. So even if you just added a little bit of juice to your sparkling water, that might give you something more flavoring. Again, don't stock up on those sugary drinks and beverages. And instead, keep cold bottled water in the fridge, sparkling water in the fridge, grab for something else. Also, if you're thinking about you want to reach for a drink and you just need something else, think about low fat or fat-free milk are much better. If you're a soy, almond, oat milk drinker, look at that food label. I started adding almond milk to my coffee, and it was very difficult for me to find no sugar added almond milk, but I eventually found it. That's the same with soy. And I feel like if you're drinking something every day or you're eating something every day, you want to make sure that it's the healthiest thing for your body. So skip the flavoring. One of the things I do if I'm just craving a vanilla latte is I'll ask for half of the flavoring, and I don't ever ask for any whipped cream on it. I also ask for low fat, the fat-free milk, because they automatically, and I think a lot of people don't understand this either, they automatically will go to the whole milk in your latte, mocha, all your beverages, because it tastes better, it's richer, it's fuller. So you specifically have to ask for fat-free milk when you're getting a specialty coffee. And then you can ask them, say, hey, can I see the food label for your soy milk, your almond milk, your oat milk? Does it have extra sugar in it? And then also there are the sugar-free versions of those syrups too. And sometimes, if they put 4 pumps in a grande coffee at Starbucks, that is a lot of that artificial sweetener. So you could probably get away with even just 1 pump of the sugar-free syrup, as opposed to 4 pumps of, like, say, the normal vanilla flavoring. Read those food labels, look at the added sugar. You don't have to worry quite as much about the total sugar. Look at the added sugar. And then remember looking at those fructose sucrose, those oses, brown sugar, raw sugar, high fructose corn syrup. And then the best thing for us to do is to carry around reusable water bottles, refill that throughout the day. You know, some people that I know start their day in the morning and say, okay, before I leave the house, I have to finish this much water so that I at least know that I'm getting, and you know what, when we drink water, we're less hungry too. So if you're trying to cut back on how much you're eating and how many calories you're eating, sometimes all it takes is drinking an entire glass of water, wait for 5 or 10 minutes, and you won't be hungry again. All right, so here is a video, and this is pretty, we're getting towards the end of our presentation here. I found this. This is a spin-off on that song that Coca-Cola had about how happy Coca-Cola makes us all feel and how we're all dancing around and there's polar bears everywhere and we're dancing. And that this came through a sugar-sweetened beverage Rethink Your Drink campaign. There's several videos out there. This is a really short one, but it kind of gives a depiction of, you know, maybe this sugar-sweetened beverages, it started off as, ooh, yum, you know, Coca-Cola is the best thing ever. And now our consumption is so high that perhaps it's changing into a different tune because it's causing so many problems in our society today.
I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world.
Sorry about that.
I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a drink that doesn't cause disease. I'd like to teach the world about what sugar sweetens to liquid calories gave her diabetes, which really ain't so sweet. If not for drinking soda pop, it's just so sugary. My liver might not be in lunch, might have a few more teeth. That's obesity. Back to diabetes. Please drink soda less. This isn't happiness. That's obesity. Back to diabetes. Please drink soda less. This isn't happiness. Soda.
And that is the end of our sugar-sweetened beverage presentation for the Winnebago Public Health Department. And I just always like to go back to knowing that, you know, water is quite sacred in the Winnebago tribe. And I know that water is life. And so when we're thinking about what is the most nourishing, what is the most balancing, we always just come back to something as simple as water.